I'd like to thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Designing Interactive Library Spaces on Limited Budgets. I'm Liz Bowie, Content Manager at Demco, and I'll be moderating today's session. Before we get started, I just want to go through some housekeeping details, and then I'll introduce our speaker and he can get started with today's presentation. On your screens, you should see a question box on the right-hand side. So if you have a question or need technical help, please use this box to communicate with us. If we don't get to your question during the session, we'll be posting questions and answers along with the recorded webcast, presentation slides, and resources after the event. You'll receive an email in about a week letting you know when everything is available. You'll also notice our presenters' contact information as well as mine, so please feel free to contact us directly with any questions that haven't been answered in the follow-up resources. We're also using Twitter today with the hashtag DemcoIdeas. You should be able to see this hashtag on the side of your screen in the chat box, and we're monitoring that feed as well for questions and comments. So I believe that's all the housekeeping, so let's get started with the program. As I mentioned, I'm Liz Bowie, and I'm moderating today's session, and I'm very excited to introduce you to our speaker today, Brian Pickman. Brian's passion for libraries began when he was hired for his first job as a page at 16. He quickly moved into the role of circulation clerk and eventually became the director of IT for the Mokina Library in Illinois. While he was obtaining his master's in informational security, he redesigned the children's library and helped Mokina become one of the first libraries to use Spiro, smart tables, and a slew of other interactive technology. He's also responsible for Google creating one of the first virtual tours done in a library. And we'll actually share that link with you after the program so you can see that virtual tour. Brian is currently the Director of Strategic Innovation at the Evolve project. Much of Evolve's work includes building innovative works geared towards interaction and collaboration and helping libraries bridge the digital divide, break away from traditional library views, and become trendsetters. Brian is dedicated to bringing libraries into the future using cost-effective measures and strategies. He often presents on innovative technology and loves collaborating with both libraries and companies. In his work with startup companies around the world, he promotes libraries and encourages people to work closer with libraries when developing new ideas and concepts. And we're so excited to have Brian with us today to talk about new ways to create interactive patron experiences in your library. So it looks like we're ready to get started with the program, and Brian, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. So today we'll be talking about designing interactive library spaces on limited budgets. As Liz mentioned earlier, feel free to tweet the hashtag at the bottom or use my handle as well. Before we even jump into talking about building interactive spaces, one of the things that we always have to understand is there is some risks involved. Not all the ideas are the best ideas in the world. And when you're communicating with people or communicating with your board about a new idea or a new initiative you want to launch into your library, whether those ideas are from this webinar or from somewhere else, it's always best to even call it a pilot program or a beta program. It just sounds better if you're pitching a new idea that hasn't been done before. So I encourage you overall to take risks. Some of the stuff I'll show you today might look really scary or really complicated, and some of the things are kind of on the higher end of pricing, but at the end of the day, we're all about taking risks, trying new things. When we talk about our library spaces and we're implementing new technology or letting people play with new technology, one of the other things we'll notice is that people will fail. People will struggle with something we implement, or it might be difficult for them to understand, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay if someone gets hung up on something or it just doesn't make sense, because the idea is through this interactive space or through a maker space, the idea that innovation will come through this failure. To kind of start us off today, I'm going to give you some facts about why we should even talk about this. Why is this topic relevant? So you've probably all heard of Pew Research, but they do surveys. One of the things that they found was when they were surveying people about what they thought about the library, people often said they want to do more interactive experiences, they want to do more hands-on experiences, or they want to play with new tech and new devices. And that's a really good statistic to use if you're trying to ask for funding or ask for promotions within your community for assistance in developing this new idea. By the way, I do talk relatively fast. I have a lot of slides to cover, so feel free to interrupt with a question, and I'll be able to kind of juggle, so feel free to interrupt. The other stat that I like to share with people is talking about the value of libraries. Pew Research also did a survey where they asked people, how frequently have you visited a library in the last 12 months? 53% says yes. Then they asked another question, how important is the library to the community? 91% said it was. So the question you have to ask yourself is, how do I capture that missing 38%? So as Liz mentioned earlier, I used to work at Mokina Library, and that was the same question I asked my fellow staff and my fellow colleagues, and we took it from the summer reading program aspect. How can we have so many people come into our library during the summer reading program where we're doing these really low-cost crafts and activities, and then all of a sudden when the summer reading program's over, we don't have as many people coming in? So the answer became, we need to expand our value. We want people to come into our library. I mean, more than just about books, but we want people to create stories in our library space. There's a quote I heard from a presenter once where he talked about we needed to move from the grocery store model and move into the kitchen model, and that really resonated with our objectives. And I'm going to kind of cover that. A few years ago, I redesigned our library space. We had a budget of $165,000, which is a decent chunk of change, but it was to renovate the entire library, children's library, all new technology, all new furniture, and we were able to do that well within the budget. So when we're talking about designing our spaces, the idea is that if we build something really exciting and really amp it up, people will come to our library space because they want to know what we're doing, what we're up to. And so it's based off of, and I put 5 pillars together. We want to do, encourage inventions, allow discovery, increase collaboration, get more people interacting with each other, and most importantly, foster innovation. So in terms of creation and inventions, when we're talking about our spaces, we need to look at technology and tools that allow people to express themselves, allow them to experiment, allow them to play. So the picture you see here, which I'm sure a lot of you had questions on, this was actually in Oak Park Library in Illinois. They put a corkboard together, something very similar to your garage where you have this board mounted on the garage and you can mount your tools to it. So they mounted that on a wall, and then you used golf colored tees, or different colored golf tees, and used it like a pegboard and allowed people to write stories and share what they're doing and do diagrams and pictures. And it was a very successful and a very interactive exhibit within the library space, and it drew people into the library because they want to learn more about this creation and invention. The other thing you have to think about is discovery. You want to allow your space for patrons to interact, learn, and experiment. And the best way to do that is to discover. And so I related this to when I was in college and I was in a programming class, and one of the programming teachers didn't really feel like teaching programming, and so they just gave everyone the answer key. I don't remember a single thing from that class because I was given the answers. I wasn't allowed to discover on my own. I wasn't allowed to fail on my own. And so by allowing your space to be discoverable and letting people kind of find what's there, that's incredibly important. So the picture you see here is actually a very simple bin design for books. Children do judge a book by its cover, and so by having the covers facing out, very similar to like a record store, kids can flip through books. And the low-cost alternative is just using bins and letting people pick up a bin and flip through the books. The other piece is collaboration. You want people to come into your library space and collaborate, work together. People will naturally collaborate. Strangers will naturally collaborate if it's around something fun or it's around something they're both passionate about. And so when we talk about technology, like we're going to talk about technology today, we're going to talk about some designing concepts. You want to make sure that allows people to collaborate and work together. The picture you see here is a smartboard that takes up to 10 different people playing at once and interacting with different images, doing sorting games, puzzles, etc. The other piece you want to allow in your space is interaction. And I push this incredibly hard, and I want people to understand that you can build one of the world's most cool spaces. You can have like holograms and levitating devices and transporters if you wanted, and a time machine. But it'll be probably the most boring space in the world if there's no interaction, if there's no one interacting with the patrons or patrons amongst themselves. And so you want to make sure that it's interactive. And so the picture you see here are very, very simple boards with little paintings on them and simple activities. So it's kind of hard to see in the image, but on the far left, it's where do these animals live, and you would just move these little wooden blocks around. and the picture in the front right is what letter does it start with, and you just move the pegboard. It's very simple. It's interactive. A library member can interact with a patron, or a parent can interact with a patron, and playing these very simple games within the space. And the final piece is innovation. And I tell people that innovation has to be an original disruptive act, meaning if someone else is doing it, feel free to take it, but add your own twist to it. Make it unique, make it special to yourself. And so one of the things that we strive for when I worked at the library was coming up with new innovative activities that will challenge people and let them come up with their own solutions. So the picture you see here is a product called Sound Egg, where it's a semi-soundproof egg where you would sit into it. And there's about a 40 decibel difference between the inside and the outside of the egg, which would be me talking this in this normal voice and me whispering very softly, and that's what you would hear. And so you can do activities, you can play video games through here, you can do playaways, you can read a book, you can listen to a book, and it's self-contained. So everything that we talk about is based off of those pillars of innovation, collaboration, etc. When we're talking about our spaces, there's a few things we need to consider and think about. The first of which is just adding color. Adding color is probably the most inexpensive design change you can do in your library that has the most dramatic impact. So if we're talking about parks, for instance, parks are very, very colorful. They're inviting. People love parks, mostly younger people. But it's fun. When people see something fun and bright and inviting, they're more welcomed in. If we look at workspaces from startup companies, for instance, like Google, they use fun, bright colors on the wall because it helps people get energized about the work they do. And it just gives this uplifting experience. There's color palettes you can choose from that will give people certain things. So like blue, for instance, if you paint a wall blue, it's supposed to be calming. I was in a library once that had a nursery room, and they used a specific tone, I believe, of red, because that's supposed to help thought processes for younger kids. But you can actually choose colors that have a psychological impact. And painting, again, is incredibly inexpensive. For what we did at our library it was just me and 2 other staff members, and we stayed late at night and we just painted. We ordered pizza and we made it a big event where we hung out, listened to music, ate pizza, and we painted the library. That's the view of the library when we were all done. And we had a tarp draped across that archway where people could not see what we were doing, but kids, being kids, would poke their fingers into the tarp and rip it so they could peek inside. And as they did that, we heard commotions of like, oh my God, the library's so much bigger. And it isn't, because as you can see, we're in a basement, and so we don't really have the ability to move out. But simply, and at this point, we didn't add technology, we didn't add new furniture. All we were doing right now was painting. And the children thought the library was bigger. They thought they had to wait in line for the grand opening. They thought that they had to get to the library like every single day to be part of this experience. They thought they had to tent or camp outside weeks before the grand opening so they can be one of the first people in. And again, we just with painting. The second thing that's really fun and interactive is having art in your library. But when I say art, I don't mean going to IKEA or an art gallery and purchasing art, but allowing the patrons to create it. Let them donate it to the library. And that allows you to have as many art exhibits and as many paintings and as many sculptures and as frequently or infrequently as you like. Patrons, especially younger patrons, feel like their work's been published if you showcase their art creations in the library. So now you can do 2 things. You can run a program about making sculptures or making a painting, and then allowing them to showcase it in the library, letting people check it out even. But it also gives them a sense of ownership. They'll start marketing your library, saying, hey, come visit my library. I took these photos of the city, and my library decided to post them. And you're going to start getting that 38% we talked about earlier that isn't coming into the library but says is important. And we start getting those folks into the library space to then promote our other programs, our collections, whatever special events we're running. The other important concept is having open space. You want to have open space within your library for collaboration, meetings, interaction, and using fun, bright colors within your open space kind of brings it all together. if you have rooms that you only use for one purpose, such as some libraries have a board room that's just for board meetings. Other libraries have activity rooms that are just for activity time, which is once or twice a day. And so remove those rooms and repurpose them and run activities or events all day long in them. And the other important concept is letting the community define the space. So if you get lightweight furniture, let the community move it around, choose where they want it to be. I used to work at a university, and that was one of the issues that patrons would come into the library, or students would come into the library, and were moving furniture. And at the end of every day, the staff would put the furniture back to where it was originally designed. And at one point, a librarian decided to ask a student, hey, why are you guys messing up our layout here? We put this furniture in the exact locations for a reason, and every day you come in and you pull them all together. What's going on? And they explained that within their class or within their degree program, they had huge group work projects they had to complete. And the only space on campus was the library. And unfortunately, the space within the library didn't have enough tables in one center for everyone to work together, so they were moving it. So then what the library decided to do was just leave it alone. Let the students define the space. And in turn, the library became even more popular because those students felt they had a buy-in to the library. They felt that they were part of the library experience, and then they were bragging to all of their friends and all their fellow classmates that, hey, we meet up at the library, and they let us move their tables together so we can work, and it's the coolest thing ever. And then that snowballed and it marketed, and people just wanted to come to the library because they felt it was safe. They were able to design it. They were able to have a sense of purpose to it. Another picture of furniture. So when we talk about furniture, we want to use fun, lightweight colors. And again, letting them define the space, letting them be able to pick it up. I always joke and I tell people you don't have to bolt your circulation desks to the floors anymore. People stopped stealing those a while ago. So furniture is expensive, but there's ways where you can get furniture for relatively cheap. One way is to reach out to local makerspaces. It's almost like a gym membership where people pay a fee to utilize a workshop with carpentry machines, hardware machines, all the different tools and bells and whistles they need, and then they just make stuff. And so I would encourage you to reach out to those local makerspaces and say, hey, our library wants custom furniture. If we pay for the materials, which would be a heck of a lot cheaper than buying a couch at wholesale, if we pay for the materials, will you design us custom furniture? And chances are, seeing that people are passionate about doing this kind of stuff, they're going to be more than happy to do it. And I wouldn't be surprised if people will pay for the materials for you, thus giving you free furniture. The other one is asking for community for help. So where I grew up, there was a park that was built that was driven by 100% by the community. They had a huge meeting about how the park was supposed to be designed. They had interior designer or exterior designers meet up, architects meet up, meet with different students, and they built a park with the community where everyone volunteered to build like this really cool interactive playground outside. They even had my job was to put soap on screws. So they even had everyone helping out in some fashion or another. The other thing you can do with furniture is asking your local community for help. So there was a library once, and they called it the 50 for 50 campaign, where they were going to dial 50 people and ask for $50, thus raising $2,500 to buy some new furniture. On the third or around the 9th or 10th call, one of the individuals was so excited that the library asked for help, and he loved the library, and he didn't realize that the library needed like extra funding to do cool stuff. He was so moved that he decided to write the check for the full $2,500 amount right then and there, simply because somebody asked. The other thing to consider about furniture in general is you want things to be modular or movable or changing in some way or another. So I encourage you to put things on wheels so you can move things around and allow your environment to always change. And again, there's no need to fasten your furniture to the floor. There's no need to bolt things down. Let people move it, let people make it their own. I do say don't need to put shelves on wheels. So the reason why people put shelves on wheels is so they can move the shelves apart so there's a big open space for playing and interacting. I say, I'm going to go back a couple slides, we took the approach of putting our materials in the back of the library, and then we wanted to run a big program. It's really easy to pick up this lightweight furniture, and now we have a huge space for playing games. And we did laser tag, miniature golf, etc. So taking that idea, one of the concepts was people talk about putting your milk in the back of the grocery store, and the milk in this instance would be your tech. And we decided to put our tech at the front of the grocery store, or in front of our library, so people would be drawn in, and then we encouraged the staff to bring those patrons into the stacks. Because at the end of the day, we found out that people just weren't even buying our milk. They weren't interested in our milk. So how do we trick them into coming in? Let's put the flashy stuff in the front and draw them in. The other thing is raised flooring. It's still a little bit pricey, but you can get some good deals on the internet these days. What raised flooring is, it allows you to plug in power outlets wherever you need on the floor. The floor is raised about an inch or two, so conduit can be run through. Depending on your local municipality's code, you don't even have to have an electrician add new outlets after it's put in. Like, the floor is designed for you to on demand plug in a receptacle where you want one. So in the future, as you redesign your space over and over again, you don't really have to dig up the floor, run new wires, run new Ethernet ports, because it's already there and it's easy to run. Another really cool product is called Idea Paint. Very similar to chalkboard paint, where you can paint on a wall with this special white paint and make it into a dry erase board, or paint tables with it. And so we actually put a wall together that allows people to express themselves, do little drawings with the can. For that, we just painted a wall white. That's dry erase marker, and then you can wipe it down and do something different with it. When we're talking about our collection, because we obviously can't forget about our collection when talking about our library, there's some tricks you can do to increase circulation. The one is rotating a collection, so having an always new environment. So some libraries have organized a system where some books are in the front of the library and other books are in storage, and they'll just rotate them out. So for the browsers of the world, when they browse the shelves, it always looks different. The other one is merchandising your shelves, so doing that bin style with the books, letting people flip. And the other one is using props to show the collection. So in your mystery section of your library, get some mystery gadgets, such as like the giant magnifying glass. Or if you're talking about children's section, in the Clifford area, just buy a big Clifford doll. It's cheap, it's affordable, and it draws people in. Some other cool shelving tricks. Simply by using the colors of a book, you can spice up your library environment. So, for instance, during Christmas time, walk up and down the aisles of your shelves and find the red and green books, and then have them cover out. So when you're looking at the rows and rows of books, you see these red and green covers all over the place. Granted, these books don't have to be about Christmas. They are just red and green. Or if we're talking about Halloween, find orange and black books and have them displaying. Other libraries have taken the approach of wrapping books in different colors and building trees out of them, or flags. Another really cool trick is doing a mystery bag, wrapping up a book in paper and writing what the book might be and call it a mystery. I'm one of those individuals that has to buy the bag of junk on the internet, or the box of junk on the internet, where they sell you a bunch of random stuff in a box and you don't know what it is until you get it. So these are for those individuals. That idea of mystery when you check it out. The other one is just save money, and so you can utilize money in other places, is buying used DVDs and Blu-rays and reaching out to our local video store rental places or a Redbox and saying, hey, can I buy your used DVDs and Blu-rays? And chances are they're going to be receptive and want to help out, and they might even just give them to you. So what is this making thing? Why are we talking about designing interactive spaces? Why should we be making in our spaces? So what can you even do? At the core, making is about play and interaction. We can talk about Legos because that's probably the easiest to explain, and it's used for all age groups. For younger kids, People use Legos to tell stories and build friendships and introduce collaboration. Uh, as you get older, Legos is a really great activity to bring departments together because it's playful and it's imaginative. And you can do problem solving. It's also really good for brainstorming. They say simply by tinkering, you actually do something special with your brain and allows you to think differently and from different perspectives. Within your library, you can buy a couple inexpensive cameras and do video photography or video editing. There's free video editing tools on the internet where you can edit pictures and edit videos and post them and share them. The other thing you can do is knitting or sewing and running sewing classes or knitting classes. You can even take it a step farther and do circuit-based sewing, where you can sew circuits into a jacket. I was at a tech fashion show once where a woman designed a jacket so when she's walking like in New York, she doesn't have to look at her phone for directions. There was vibrating pads on her shoulders, so when it's time to turn right, her right shoulder pad would vibrate her shoulder, letting her know she needs to make that turn. You can do music in your library. Where I grew up, music was huge. Like if you weren't in a band, people questioned what you were doing with your life. And so I encourage you, if music is something popular in a community, get some secondhand guitars, show people how to play music, and then show them how to record music and how to save it and how to make records and albums. Some libraries even can do baking activities, which I think is phenomenal. It's one of my favorite things to tell people that you can do. And do a baking class and showing people how to cook and showing people how to make things and bake and preparing dishes. Another library that will actually let you check out pots and pans. Another fan favorite is learning about electricity and how does circuits work and how does that engineering aspect work and how can we put these things together. I'm going to show you some products that will help solve that. Or robotics. Basically, everyone in the world except Sarah O'Connor loves robots. They're interactive for all ages. Everyone loves playing with robots regardless of age. And so showing people robots in the library and letting them play with a robot and then challenging them and saying, hey, let's program these robots to move on their own is one way to start building this interactive space, this learning space. One of the most popular conversations these days is coding. Getting people to learn how to code. They say within the last 10, 15 years, we haven't had any big technology jumps or any big technology advancements. It's pretty much status quo. The only changes is how we are programming these devices to work together. You might argue and say, well, Brian, I have a smartphone that can take pictures and GPS and accelerometers on it. And then I'll tell you that we've had that stuff for 20, 30 years. Same with self-driving cars. It's nothing new. We've had these sensors. It's just a group of really smart programmers and engineers refiguring it out and programming them to work together in a different way. So I always tell people that our future is dependent on how our coders can solve problems. There's another statistic that talks about how people in their 20s or more so their 30s and over, when computers were around, we had to figure out how to program them. In order to run a software program, you had to write a command. Nowadays, for our younger kids, 10, 12 years old, they don't have to do any of that. They just hit a button hit an icon, and they can start playing something. There's no interactive coding that has to take place. So then the problem becomes, what happens when they hit their 30s and 40s and the stuff stops working? Are they going to be able to troubleshoot? Are they going to be able to solve a problem because they never had to experience the problem growing up? So there's a slew of companies out there and groups and organizations that teach people how to code, and they will actually run events for your library, sometimes for free, getting people learning how to code. So again, big increased demand for programmers. Code.org is a great resource to use. In terms of software, Scratch is 100% free. There's a huge community behind it, and you don't have to have a fancy computer to run Scratch. You can run it off a Chromebook and get people learning how to program. So what's a makerspace? What's a Fab Lab? For me, they're all the same thing to me. So I've used the phrase interactive learning spaces instead. I don't know if it's coined by me or not, but I'm sure somebody else has used it before I. But essentially, I want people to use a library as a playground, bringing all this really cool interactive tech together about science, math, computers, and building electronic art, learning about circuits, working together, solving community-based problems. And so that's what you want to try to accomplish in your library space. There's three main types of learning spaces I always consider. Uh, a collaborative room, so that could be an in-person collaboration or through like a web forum. A makerspace where you just provide tools, or a space where you provide learning and like lecture-based activities. So one library, super inexpensive, is they put a table together, they get a couple of inexpensive robotic parts or different circuits or different programs they install on laptops, and they put a sign up that says, "What will you make today?" And then once a month, they do a different activity. A staff member manages the whole table. People come in on their own, sit down, play and interact, and it becomes a destination spot for families. Like, hey, we have to stop at the library to find out what we're going to make today. The Chicago Public Library has this really cool grid system they put up that allows people within the space to make art and then post the space on the outside of the walls. And thus advertising the space, letting people become publishers in the space. Other libraries can go the music sound editing route. Building a soundproof room is crazy expensive, but there's cheaper alternatives out now. In this picture, there's these styrofoam walls or styrofoam boards. So some websites will actually have you map out your space, and they'll tell you how many of these felt boards you need to buy and where to mount them. And you can build a semi-soundproof, mostly echo-proof room for sound recording or video editing, or video recording, sorry, and then using the computers to edit and digitize and make better. Some food for thought. I did talk about designing a space, but you don't have to have a dedicated space to call yourself some maker library. You can have a card table out and you can still be making. You don't have to go all out and build a whole new library, build a room. Another thing you can do is share resources across other libraries. So there's a few library consortiums around me that actually have kits that travel between different libraries, and they share them amongst each other. And that's one way to drive down the cost of something. The other thing is you don't have to buy all the latest and greatest technology. I'm going to show you some slides in a second that shows you some really cool tech. You don't have to buy them all. I always encourage people to buy one or two things and let people play, and if it works well, you expand. And the last piece is you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know how to do programming. You don't have to know how to be a robotic scientist. Let the community or let the users of the space fail and work together. And you provide the coaching or resources. So if somebody has an idea but they're not sure where to start, you as a librarian are incredibly intelligent, and you can figure out what books they should read or what materials they should check out or what programs the library is running that they should attend to learn the skills they need to be successful. So a space can have all this really awesome tech. And as I stated before, the most important thing is people. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. You have to be excited about what you're doing. Because at the end of this webinar, I'm going to show you some tricks to get like really expensive things for cheap. But in order to do that, you have to love what you're doing. You can't just be doing it because you're told to. You have to be, driven and excited. And the other thing is your community can help you get to where you want to go. So we found out that within our community, there was an individual that used to own a fishing store. And when we asked him if he would like to be part of this and run a program, he was super excited. He was retired, and so it gave him an opportunity to give back to the community. He gave giveaways, he gave prizes, showing people different fishing tricks and what fishing actually is and how to cast. And so I encourage you to reach out to your patrons and find out who the experts are and ask them, would you be willing to run a program? Would you be willing to participate in our interactive space? We want to show people how to cook next week, and we need people that know how to cook to show them. There's a library that's like an hour away from my house that apparently did a boat building or a boat weaving where you take thin pieces of wood and you weave them together to make a boat. But there's all these really cool things that the community is already passionate about. They're either doing it for their career or they're doing it as a hobby and they love it. And so they will do these events for you for free. Um, and oftentimes they'll bring all the equipment that they need to run the program because they're already excited about it. So we talk about tech. There's a whole bunch of really cool maker tech out there. To make the case for why you should do it, first of which is it provides a safe-to-fail environment. Our library spaces are unique enough where we can let people try something new without the risk of being penalized for failure. So if I was in school and I had a friend of mine that was talking about how they wanted to be an art major, but her parents wanted her to do accounting instead. So what happened was she did not get to do any art classes. She had no ability to try something out to see if she would even be good at it. So if your library could plug in into that scenario and say, hey, we're going to run art programs, so if you're interested, you don't have to pay for the class. You can come by and we'll do art programs together, which leads into the second thing, a gateway to new ideas. You can spark interest and excitement to people by giving them access to these other fields, these other interests, and help them kind of expand their knowledge set. The third is we provide new tools and resources every single day. We've been doing it for hundreds of years, and we are efficient and we are the best at it as librarians. And so providing these new tech tools is just another thing under our belt that we can be proud about, because we can show people how to do it. And these are the pitches that I make to startups. So part of what my company does is we find startup companies that haven't worked with libraries yet, and we explain to them how libraries are amazingly good at showing new tech, teaching people how to use it, and then collecting information. And this is a pitch that anyone can make. You don't have to be Brian Pitchman to do it. You can be anyone, and you can talk to these companies, and they will give you beta programs and pilot programs. Another one is, what happens if your library creates the next big entrepreneurial startup? What if you help an individual learn how to code, learn how to build circuits, and they built the new Teslas or the new Facebook of the world? And then later on in life, that library needs funding. Who are they going to ask? They're going to ask that individual that they helped grow into, a billionaire, let's say. So in terms of toys or gadgets, first thing I want to talk about is Empathy Toy. It's a product from Canada that teaches you about empathy. It's a blindfolded puzzle game where two people are blindfolded, are given a puzzle set, and one individual has to explain to another how to rebuild it. And everyone else watches, and you learn about how people communicate and how people collaborate and work together. In terms of tech toys, Sphero is a really great product that teaches you how to code. They have a whole slew of different apps that allow you to program the ball to move on its own, drive it like an RC car. You can play tag with these. You can actually coordinate their movements to music, and a whole bunch of these really fun activities that you could bring people in. And the ball itself is fairly inexpensive. Dash and Dot are two other robots that you can learn how to code and program. They're adorable little robots that make cute little voices and noises as you're learning and as you're playing. Vex Robotics is a competitor to LEGO Mindstorms. The thing I like about Vex Robotics is you can actually 3D print any of the pieces in case you lose them. They have a website where if you lost a piece, they have the 3D drawings right next to it, and you click on a little download and you can send it to your printer and print. They run the same contests and competitions as LEGO Mindstorms as well, where you can actually go to a Vex Robotics competition as a library and participate and challenge and win national and whatnot. Ozobot is a really cool product that teaches you how to program simply by drawing, and it's very inexpensive in terms of what a robot is. And the return on investment for these little guys is infinite because you can keep reusing these robots over and over again. And based off of what color patterns you're using, the robots will do different tricks. If it sees a blue line, it turns blue. If it sees green, it turns green. If you do a different series of dashes, it'll go faster versus another series of dashes, which will make it go slower. MeeperBot is another really great product where you can build Legos on top of a remote control vehicle, and then almost do battle bots with it, where you can, encourage your patrons to crash into each other. And then how can you build a more structurally sound robot would be the challenge. Finch is another great product that teaches you how to program through a wired robot. And the individual that invented Finch built his own variant of Scratch called Snap, that by simply dragging and dropping icons, you can make the Finch move. And there's a whole slew of sensors on the Finch that you can then program and teach it to avoid obstacles, for instance. Kublets is a very durable product that you can build robots out of. Each cube has a different function, and when you put these cubes together, you can make a robot move. You can make a robot light up. You can also program it via Bluetooth to move on its own or to interact differently. So the black cubes are sensors for the most part, and the white cubes are outputs such as sound, lights, or motors. And by putting these things together, you can have them move on their own. Wink is a very affordable robot based on Arduino, where you can program a whole slew of different sensors built into the robots. The robots have LEDs you can program, motors that make it move you can program, line sensors, light sensors, buzzers. It's taptic, so it can react to being bumped into. The gentleman that invented this company wrote a chapter book. It's like 14 different chapters filled with like activities. And so he breaks it down like, let's learn how to program the LEDs, and this is how you would code color and lights in Arduino. Little Robot Friends is a company based in Canada that you can, and they're supposed to be social robots. And so I would connect my robot to a wireless network, pair it with one of my friends, and I can interact with my robot, which will then send wirelessly its reaction to my friend's robot. And all of it is programmable either through their own app, which is GUI driven, so you see icons and you can edit, or through Arduino as well. Littlebits is probably one of the most popular circuit companies that teaches you about engineering and putting prototypes together. And then by linking these little circuits together, you can build a complete circuit. A circuit needs power, input, and an output to work. And so the blue one connects to the purple ones, connects to the green ones, and you make a completed circuit. I was once in Colorado, and I like to share this story, where there was a group of kids, or two little daughters from a family that were visiting, and they were so excited to play with circuits that for the first time ever, they got along, and they were helping each other and learning without a background in electricity. At the end of the event, I ran into the parents again, and their kids' favorite adventure of the entire vacation they had was playing with the circuits from some circuit dude, which was apparently my name. Light Up is another company that builds an augmented reality layer over the circuit pieces that you can take a picture of, and it'll tell you if you built the circuit incorrectly or not. Makey Makey is a circuit board that you can make a controller out of everyday objects. So if you build a game in Scratch, you can then link bananas or Play-Doh or even aluminum foil and interact with whatever game you made. Tickly Shapes is geared for younger kids, teaching you about math, shapes, and spelling. And it's a really inexpensive product. If you already have iPads, it's really easy to add to your collection. Osmo is another product very similar to Tiggly, but in terms of having a physical product with a digital output. But Osmo you can learn how to code. You can do spelling games. You can do math games. You can do puzzles. You can learn about physics, all through the various apps that are free and their product. Hummingbird is a robotics kit with all these different motors, sensors, lights, gears, and an Arduino board. And you would plug it into your computer, and you can make miniature robots and also program these robots through Scratch. Cubetto is a very, very clean product that teaches you how to code without a tablet. Good for younger kids learning about series. So in the image on the left, that little board with the 4 different colored squares, each square tells a robot to move in a different direction, and by putting these in a series, the robot will move it. And the idea is that Cubetto is on an adventure, and so you share a story with people, like how do I get Cubeto from point A to point B. Similar to Cubeto is Bbot, where you can lay out using tactiles a robot to move on its own. Same concept. How do I get the bot from point A to point B and putting these things in series? Sam Labs is a newer company that has like circuit bits that are programmable through an app. Each block is wireless, or Bluetooth rather, and can be programmed, and you would link them together using their free app. There's a newer company out from Brown Dog Gadgets called Crazy Circuits, where these circuits will mount onto Legos, and you can program and do different activities, such as doing crafts, learning how to program, doing really simple activities. You can do music with it. You can program them to blink on their own or do reactionary-based learning. There's an app that's 100% free called Hopscotch that you can build games out of. And so very similar to if you've seen Scratch before, you drag and drop icons and you would build your own character. Then you teach that character what to do during different actions or interactions, and you can actually build games. So kids have built games such as Frogger, where you would tap the screen and a character moves across a row of traffic. In terms of 3D printing, 3Doodler is probably one of my favorite 3D pens where you can draw in 3D. This is really great for the creative types and showing them how you can create and make with plastics or wood and metal. 3D printers as a whole have been changing dramatically. The price point of 3D printers has gone down as more competitors have entered the field. One of my favorite 3D printing companies is Robo3D, which makes comparable 3D prints compared to MakerBot. If we look towards the future, a lot of people are talking about gesture-based programming. So communicating with our world and our environment using our hands. So there's a whole bunch of sites that allow you to learn about it: Microsoft Connect, Leap Motion, PrimeSense, and Evolus. So in this example, it's a projector in the air, and that when kids are standing around a digital soccer ball, they can kick it and the ball moves. This is an exhibit by Carolina Sabetka. Her website's gravitytrap.com, and she builds interactive exhibits with gesture-based computing as well. All this stuff is open source. There's a website called openframeworks.cc where it has a whole library full of gesture-based computing, and you can set up interactive exhibits such as this, where you can pretend you throw a ball and the dog will disappear and come back. You can pretend you're giving the dog a treat and it'll look for it. This is in Dayton, Ohio, where a group of programmers took open source software, and as people walk across this mural, these cubes turn around and show pictures of the university. And this is the interactive rainforest, formerly a traveling exhibit, also using open source software to allow people to move a digital stream towards a wall and to grow a tree. And the last piece is virtual reality. So people have probably heard of Oculus or HTC Sense, which is in the bottom left, or the HoloLens in the right. These products are obviously very expensive right now, but in the future, they're probably going to go down in price. So how do we engage our space? I'm going to zip through these so we have time for questions. Build a business within your library space. Allow people to come together using the technology or using the resources to build businesses and ideas. Great challenges. So we all have developmental projects. Some of us will talk about, hey, I wish our ILS worked differently. Make that a challenge. Invite your community to recode the ILS. Conversely, if you wanted free marketing help, have the library or have your patrons help you do video design, graphic design, 3D design, or just in general, identify a problem in the community and have the space solve it. Another cool activity is Startup Weekend. There's the website. It's essentially 54 hours of nonstop collaboration where people come up with business ideas and you actually launch a business within 54 hours. And your library could run one of these. Or participate at a maker fair. Show what you can do, or at least visit and see what people are making and talking about, and then invite those individuals you like to exhibit in your library. A few websites to help. Instructables is one, and one of my personal favorites is makeitatatyourlibrary.org. and they put together an entire website that you basically choose like how much money you want to spend, how much time you want to spend, what age groups, and it will walk you through different activities you can do in your library space. Things not to do in your space. Don't have things locked up or stored away. Let people see what you have. Have it out on the floor. Have it out on a table. Let people come up and play. One of the concerns that people bring up is fear of theft. And I encourage you, don't make that a fear. If we were afraid of people stealing stuff, we probably shouldn't have books then. There was a study once that did a comparison based off of what was stolen and what wasn't returned. And the percentage of stolen was under 5%, and the stuff that was missing that wasn't returned was at like 15 to 20%. And so the idea is don't be worried. Give it a try. If people start stealing your things, then reevaluate. Some other cool activities you can do in your space that are really affordable. Do break and makes. So take something apart and put it back together. One library once did, it's called Unfinished Objects, or UFO. Somebody had all these motorcycle parts, and the library actually rebuilt motorcycles one day outside in the parking lot with this one guy that had a whole bunch of junk motorcycles, and people built working motorcycles at the end of the day, learning about how engines work and how all that process works. The other one that's one of my favorites is a music or art showcase. Host a Battle of the Bands event, host an art gallery, letting people show what they've created either in your space or at home, and bringing people together within your library. Promotion-wise, use social media to interact with your community. Post things out on the same forums that they use. So if they're posting on Facebook, encourage your users that are using your library space to post them on Facebook or Twitter, etc. Social media as a whole is about networking. So you want to find people that don't know what you're doing or what you're working on, and encourage them to come into your library. So if you see someone local, and you can actually search for tweets within a specific vicinity, if they're doing something exciting, tweet to them and ask if they would like to be part of your library. I've done this, and it's not really hard. I've even done it once to AT&T. They messed something up on my account. I ended up getting my like $750 waived on a phone I owed to make up for it. And so doing these things is important. It's a lot of hard work. You have to do a lot of tracking, but simply by doing it, you can actually get donations. Funding-wise, this essentially was me when I was putting together the library design, and I had to quickly figure out how to get stuff for free or more affordable. And so take the approach of selling your ideas. So promote what you do and ask vendors, hi, I'm building a really cool interactive library space. I have a limited budget, so I can't afford your price point. But if you would like to be part of our library, this is what I need you to do. So there's multiple steps to do that. So develop a short pitch. So ours was, we have a population of 20,000 users. I want to bring what you have into our library. When can we talk? And I would always schedule it to a different day, because I don't want to interrupt someone's day because they won't pay attention to what I have to say. And so reschedule it for a different time, and then be honest with them. Disclose how much money you have, what you're trying to accomplish. And then you can talk about how you're really good at exposure and delivering content, doing this as a community support idea. In 2007, there was a group called Harris Interactive that explored the buying power of libraries. And so they did a survey, and they found out that people that would check something out of the library were 40 to 40% of the time, adults would actually then buy the book after checking it out. And so you can utilize this. We're talking about why people should work with us. Why should we have vendor A, B, and C provide content to us for free or at a reduced cost? How can we get them to work together? And so by delivering these conversations and having them, you can drastically reduce some of those pain points. TED Talk from Amanda Palmer. If you've never heard of her, check out the link, and she talks about the art of asking and how it's so important to simply ask. At the end of the day, you're going to do a lot of negotiations. So some of the stuff does cost money, but to make it more affordable, just negotiate with those people. Or use crowdsourced funding through Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Or lastly, just ask for donations or giveaways. Work up organizational charts. So look them up on LinkedIn and find out who the CEO is and work down. You will get a lot of no's. I would encourage you, don't get discouraged. If someone says no to you, just reevaluate and repitch in a different way. Or ask for somebody different and say, hey, can I speak to someone from marketing then? You're not going to be successful 100% of the time when you're asking for help. So just ask in a different way. Lots of ways to save money. I actually go to pawn shops and buy iPad minis for $100 to $150, and for whatever reason, they're not sure how to price them, so I get them for a steal, or laptops. So do those kind of tricks. So what's next? What happens if you make your library the next startup hub, the idea center, a place of beta tests? Have people use those tools within your library. Get them into your library space using social media. Asking your community to help do some of the advertising for you or donating for you. Have them run the programs. And then just 3 other slides. Other ideas you can do in your space. Catalog. So I'm like super hardcore techie guy. So this is stuff that is also of interest, but for the non-techies. So doing a seed library, letting people exchange seeds. Building a gardening space, letting people check out a plot of land outside your library and learning about how to plant and how to garden. Donating food to local food pantries. Coupon sharing, which is oddly hugely popular. I've tried doing the whole coupon thing, just wasn't successful. And allow other items for checkout, such as guitars, fishing poles, pots and pans, sewing machines. People will donate these things to your library space. Running a zombie program. Everyone loves zombies for the most part, so you can teach people how to do makeup and then record it, learn how to do recording, acting, and presenting, directing, and pulling all that together within your library. And again, as we talked about earlier, doing music, having somebody perform music within your library space. Do a Battle of the Bands event outside, or a movie night. Check out a movie from Amazon and do a screening. Sometimes Amazon will actually let you watch a movie before it hits the theater. Or a miniature event. This is one of my colleagues tweeting out for help, saying, hey, we need donations for a miniature event. We ended up getting a couple $100 worth of donations from one tweet. Do a lock-in within your library, doing activities and programs. Do a teddy bear lock-in. Let people keep their stuffed animals overnight, take photos, and then give them back to the individual that left their favorite stuffed animal with you. Run a summer program, which is perfect time of the year, where people can learn about art, video, math, and writing, and run it within your library space. And that's a wrap. Are there any questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you so much, Brian. A lot of great information in this hour. I know that sometimes we do pack a lot of information into a 1-hour session, so I want to remind everybody that a recording of the webcast will be available on the Demco Ideas and Inspiration website, and that's ideas.demco.com, in a couple days, and so that you can review the presentation and share it with your colleagues. And next week, you'll also be receiving an email that will include the slides, a resource list, and a full Q&A. I think that we have a little bit of time for a couple questions here. Our first question, actually, you know what, Brian? Before we get into questions, I did want to have you mention that you are going to be at ALA, and I wanted to have you mention what you'll be doing there. So if some of our listeners are attending, they'll be able to connect with you there.
Oh, yeah. So at ALA, there's the ALA Playground, and there's like a couple maker demo areas. I will be there with showing off some of the products I talked about in today's webinar. So you can feel free to stop by, play with a 3D pen, play with little bits, program robots, and just like hang out for the day if you wanted. It's going at the same time of the exhibit hall. We're in the exhibit hall. So it's from Friday night to Monday morning.
Great, thank you. And let's fit in a couple questions here. We've got a lot of great questions. One person wants to know some suggestions. You shared a lot of great tech toys, but do you have suggestions in particular for those that are great for the entire family to enjoy?
Yeah, so I hinted on a little bit, like Legos is from a non-tech standpoint, or really great for the whole family because everyone can play together or work on different components of a building, if you will, and then bring it together at the end. From the more technical perspective, playing with a robot, so Sphero Ball, I like to use an example. You can have some family members designing the course for the ball, and usually the younger one will then want to try to navigate the course, and so that's how you could set it up.
Great, thank you. Um, and again, you shared a lot of great tools. Are these electronics simple enough that if left in a maker room, they could be used without assistance? And some of those tools required apps so that they can be used for coding. Um, they're wondering how would patrons know that they need to get an app for those products? So do you supply the devices that they're using with them?
So I've seen it in both ways. Some people will put a one pager out next to the product that says, hey, to play with this, here's a couple apps you should check out from your app store, install it on your phone, and it'll work. Other libraries will actually just leave a pile of iPads with all or iPads or Android devices with all of the apps on it. And for the most part, it's fairly intuitive, or you can put things in folders. So you would look at the folder for, let's say, Sphero, open the Sphero folder and see all the different Sphero apps. For the younger kids, at least, they seem to get it because they're used to just clicking around. Whereas some of the like the teens or high schoolers, you might have to kind of help them navigate to find the correct app. So at the end of the day, it all depends on your what you have as a resource. So if you can have tablets out, just installing it pre-game, uh, people can usually navigate from there.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today, so we do want to thank our presenter for sharing his insights with us all today. And we do hope that everyone was able to take away some ideas they can implement in their own libraries. I did mention that this recording will be available in a couple days on the IDEA site, and you will get a notification in about a week so that you have a link to the recorded webcast and the full Q&A so that all of your questions will be answered. You'll also be receiving a survey at the end of the webinar to let us know how we did, so please take a few moments and give us your feedback and thoughts on future webinar topics. And we hope you also have a chance to check out our recorded webinars, which are always available for free to watch at any time at your convenience at ideas.demco.com. Again, thank you so much for joining us today and have a wonderful afternoon.